Welcome, gentlemen. Okay, so I'm going to give everyone in the audience kind of a quick brief on how this is going to flow. I always like to help people understand what are you going to get into with this session. So first things first, we're going to do a quick introduction and some points of views on the topic. What is one takeaway everybody here wants you to know? Then we're going to dive into the why. What mindset should you have on this topic? We'll also dive into the how. Let's talk about some tactical things. And then we're going to open it up for you guys. We actually really want to hear from you today. We talk a lot about testimonials all day long. We want to hear from you. What questions do you have? Now, I do want to make an important point first and foremost. This session is not about how you can be compliant in testimonial marketing, or can you even use testimonials in your marketing. That's old school at this point. At this point, we're focusing on how can you actually just do it well. But we will lightly touch on compliance, and with the Q&A section, you can ask all the compliance questions that your heart desires. Okay, so first up, what I want to do is I kind of want to go around here. I want you to share your name, your company, which I've already shared on your behalf, but maybe what your company does, a quick one-liner for the audience. And then I want to know, what is something that you want every advisor in this room to take away on the topic of user-generated content, aka reviews or testimonials. Andrew, we'll start with you.
My name is Andrew Johnson. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Testimonial IQ. As our name implies, we do testimonials, reputation management for financial advisors. And I think one thing I want folks to take away is, if you think about user-generated content testimonials, not just within wealth management, within everything consumers face these days, people have a paradox of choice. There's no longer 6 types of sneakers to choose from. There's 6,000, 60,000, and it's similar in wealth management. So people have too many choices, and they need tools and heuristics to whittle those down. And at the same time, we also operate in a trust deficit. So it's harder to stand out, it's harder to build trust, and user-generated content plays a role in both of those.
Hey everybody, I'm Whit Lanier. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Amplify Reviews. Quick background. This is the second company I've worked on that focused on online reviews in regulated industries. So my previous company helped some of the country's biggest healthcare systems like Johns Hopkins and Intermountain Healthcare to collect and publish verified patient reviews. So we watched how fast that industry adopted this, and now that the SEC has removed the barrier that was in place, we expect the same adoption, or maybe faster, to happen here. The takeaway, to piggyback on what Andrew said, I encourage everybody just over the course of the next week to pay attention for 1 week, just how many times you interact with online ratings and reviews to make just about every decision that you need to make over the course of getting through your day, getting through your job, getting through your life. And I think a big takeaway that all of us want to impart upon you is there is no reason to think that this industry won't follow the same trend.
Absolutely. Brian.
All right. Well, good afternoon. I'm Brian Thorpe, founder and CEO of WealthTender. We launched WealthTender in 2019 as the industry's first SEC-compliant online review platform for financial advisors. Today, WealthTender.com is visited by about 500,000 consumers a year. So helping advisors with their digital marketing, SEO, showing up in new AI-type tools. And one of the takeaways that I would just mention regarding testimonials is to really think about each testimonial as a short story. It's a story that your clients are sharing about their experience working with you. And what we've seen, and we have a recent study that demonstrates this with thousands of reviews that advisors have collected on WealthTender over the last few years, is that's what people are talking about, is the emotional side. There's a story about the relationship with you as an advisor. And what we've identified is it's fewer than 10% of reviews that really speak about investments or even touch on anything close to performance. So 90% of people, they're talking about the emotional side, how you make them feel, the financial planning, and the work that you're doing to help them achieve a life goal.
Hey everyone, my name is Mayank Jain. I'm the head of strategy at Wiser Advisor. Prior to working at Wiser Advisor, I worked at Reddit, specifically on growth and SEO. Reddit's one of the biggest user-generated content platforms out there, gets most of its traffic from SEO, so definitely know a lot about how to leverage that sort of content. And Wiser Advisor is a lead gen platform. We own a platform called IndieFin that I lead that focuses on client reviews, and feedback from your customers. And so I think the one thing I want to point out is how important user-generated content is when we're talking about SEO and even AI optimization. It's a totally different type of content viewed in a completely different way compared to things that you can put out yourself, whether that's on social or on your website. So you really need to think about what strategy you have for collecting that sort of content and putting it out there.
Absolutely. And user-generated content in the world of Reddit looks one way, but in the world of financial advice, we're talking testimonials, but even case studies, case studies on your website, online reviews. Gentlemen, thank you so much for the quick introduction. We're going to move into section 1 here on mindset and why this is so important. So the first question I want to ask is for you, Whit, how do testimonials build trust faster than other types of content?
Yeah. Unfortunately, I missed the session earlier today on behavioral finance, but I have a feeling my answer is going to echo some of what they've said. I think the headline is data gets attention and emotion gets action. If we look at this from a cognitive psychology or a behavioral economics standpoint, Daniel Kahneman talks about how our decision-making process has 2 systems. System 1 is fast and intuitive and emotional, and system 2 is slow and deliberate and rational. And we all like to think that we make decisions through that rational process, but I think the research shows that when you actually get over the hurdle of making a decision, it's the system 1, it's the emotional one that gets the decision made, and then you justify your decision with the rational side. So testimonials, reviews are really that heuristic. They're the short circuit to that process that can get a prospect to the point of feeling that gut sense of safety and security, because they convince a prospect, somebody like you has already trusted somebody like me to do this. And so because of that, a collection of client ratings and reviews that can be consumed in 30 to 60 seconds are going to do more to build trust than 3,000 words of web copy in a white paper or on your website.
Absolutely. Now, speaking about consumer trust, let's look on the advisor side and what I call, advisor self-trust, or in this case, self-doubt, imposter syndrome. I think a lot of advisors in this room might feel, this way when thinking about asking clients for a review. It's like, ooh, well, what are they going to say? You start to doubt yourself. So Mike, I'd be curious what your thoughts are on how can advisors sort of overcome this imposter syndrome around testimonials?
Yeah, it's so interesting because this comes up a lot when we're talking to prospects is, what if I get a bad review? Or what if I get bad reviews in general? And I think what I often ask people is, how many of you think that you're doing a bad job for your clients? Nobody actually, in their heart of hearts, thinks that. It's just this moment when it comes down to the nitty-gritty of asking for a review, we worry about that worst case scenario. And I think oftentimes I try to flip it around and say, what's the benefit of, what's the unbounded upside of having this amazing testimonial content that you can put out there for marketing? And I think that's sometimes what people miss. And then the flip side is just in the actual data that we've collected over the years. We've never had an advisor that got less than 4.7, 4.8 star rating. So the vast majority of people get really amazing testimonial content that they can put out there. And so don't let that fear be the thing that's holding you back from leveraging this content that's so powerful for your marketing.
Yep, absolutely. Now, this next question I would love for all of you to weigh in on because I think it is so important, and it's AI, right? How is AI tools like ChatGPT, for example, right? How is that playing a role with testimonial marketing? How are having testimonials impacting these search results and how people are finding financial advisors? Andrew, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I guess the frustrating answer is I don't think anyone knows yet. I think what you're seeing with ChatGPT and Gemini and the others is that something similar we saw with Google zero-click searches, right? I think everyone freaked out that, fewer people are going to land on your website because they're just getting information from zero-click searches. And I think ChatGPT is going to be something similar. But what I think folks have to understand is there's different types of searches, and most are informational and a few are transactional. And so I don't think folks need to worry if people are searching for information about Roth IRAs and they aren't landing on your firm's site, because they're probably just looking for a very specific answer that an LLM is going to summarize. But where testimonials, I think, will be incredibly impactful is, the LLMs are doing the exact same thing that Google zero-click search is trying to do, which is present the most relevant information to people. and present information that it believes has authority. And so it's going to search for things like testimonials, user-generated content, or any other signs that says, hey, I should present this information as an option to the searcher. And so when someone is doing more transactional search and is actually saying, I want to connect with someone, it's not going to be the silver bullet, but I think it's going to be an important part of making sure that your firm or your firm's website is listed as an option there.
Mm-hmm. Whit?
I've got 2 quick points. One is what we've heard, I think, across a lot of the sessions today is that for all of the ways that AI will make things more efficient and easier on us, the human element is going to become even more important in a lot of relationships, a lot of interactions. And so early on in a prospect's advisor research, they may rely on an AI tool a lot to narrow down the field. But before they go to make that decision, I think they're going to want to see what do other humans have to say. So that's only going to increase the value of testimonials. And I'll skip the second one, so I don't.
Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, again, it's going to be fascinating to just watch how this develops with AI. But again, going back to these stories that are being shared within these testimonials, those are all content that ultimately, as Andrew mentioned, the LLMs, the large language models, are digesting and ultimately producing in different types of search queries that are out there. And as people are getting more specific with their searches, they're not necessarily saying, I'm looking for a financial advisor near me. They're being trained by, as consumers, we've trained ourselves, and as these tools are starting to train us to be much more specific in the types of inquiries. So I'm looking for a financial advisor that specializes in small business owners in the Charlotte area, specifically can help me with 401k plan, et cetera. And the reviews that people are writing about you may contain content that's relevant to the types of services that people are requesting. And I think that's just going to be incredibly impactful as we go forward, that you're not only talking about the services that you provide, but to help these LLMs, to help these AI tools surface that content that's being produced by your clients, ultimately that user-generated content that Mayank was talking about as well.
Yeah, I think the thing I would add is to think about how the job of these AI engines or ChatGPT differs from Google and SEO, because the LLMs have to try to give you one answer right away. They can't give you options. And so one of the important ranking signals is authority. And there's a scene in that movie Elf where Will Ferrell walks into the coffee shop and he says, "World's best cup of coffee," right? That's how we all talk about our own businesses, but we don't have authority to say that, right? It's our customers that can put that data into the LLMs. And so I think that's where reviews and testimonials play a big role in allowing them to recommend us with some reasoning behind it.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Andrew, I want to turn to you for this next question. There's advisor branding and there's firm branding, and there's always this big debate about which one's more important. I'd love your take. Where do testimonials come into play? How do they impact advisor branding and firm branding?
I think you have to have both. You can have, if you have a restaurant that's got 3 stars on Yelp, but everyone says they have great hamburgers, people still aren't going to go there, right? They want trust that they can trust the brand. And I mentioned earlier that we kind of live in a trust deficit. There's too many options. We all face it, right? The Kits' map is exploding, and so we all have to compete and show that we're the solution that you should take your time talking to. Advisors used to be competing for folks in the neighborhood. Now you're competing for folks all across the country. And everyone's making big, bold claims, and how do you stand out? And so I think building a brand is how in other industries they do it. It's very hard to build a brand in wealth management that is familiar to consumers because you're not something they interact with every day. And so user-generated content, testimonials, case studies, right? These are all tools where you can help people say that, okay, this is a firm that other people trust. And then from there, the next layer is, who am I going to be working with there, and can I trust that person? So the maybe frustrating answer is I think it's you have to have both.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else want to weigh in on that question?
I'll chime in with a couple of thoughts. If you're an advisor and you are affiliated with Merrill Lynch or Edward Jones, you have this massive brand behind you, and you've presumably chosen that as part of your marketing message. I'm associated with this powerhouse brand, familiar to everybody, that may even have a J.D. Power award, something that people are familiar with at a household brand level. But when it comes to independent advisors, a lot of people are looking to understand more about that financial advisor as the ambassador of your brand, the ambassador of your firm. And so the reviews that you're generating at an advisor level, your advisors being brand ambassadors can really be an impactful way to now compete with those multi-million-dollar budgets, with that household brand, with a J.D. Power award, and to now be able to utilize these testimonials to compete on a more even playing field with wirehouse advisors or firms that have multi-million-dollar budgets, because ultimately what matters more than those budgets and advertising campaigns to most consumers is the experience that they can read about what your clients have to say working with you, without regard to whether or not you're affiliated with a large household brand name or an independent firm.
Excellent points. This next question.
I got a tiny
Go
nugget.
ahead, Whit.
Real short nugget is just this. If you're on the fence, our data suggests if the request comes from an advisor about an advisor, you will get a much higher response rate than if it comes from the firm and asking about your experience with the firm.
I mean, that's in a lot of marketing channels too, right? Even with email, like having a name in an email versus from the team goes a lot farther.
Yeah.
Humanization, right? Relatability. Okay, this next question, let's make it quick, and then we're going to move into the how-to section, and then we'll open it up for audience feedback and questions, and we'll have a slide for you to connect with us and a few other things we're going to pull up. So right now, what is the risk to firms who are not adopting reviews? Because I know there's probably a few in this room, and we'll talk with the audience in a bit, but what's the risk? Andrew, kick us off.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think the risk today, minimal, right? There's still 10% of firms that aren't doing it, but tomorrow and the day after that, it just keeps increasing. Brian made some excellent points earlier about if you're a small business, right? This is critically important. There are a bunch of studies when Yelp first came out that showed the same thing, right? Yelp didn't affect the business traffic for TGI Fridays, but it had a massive impact for the smaller firms. And this is a critical time in the industry, because if you're a restaurant, you need 500 reviews to stand out. If you're a financial advisor today, you can do it 5 or 6. So if you get the head start today, you're going to be in a great place in a year or two. But if you don't, you're going to be left behind very quickly, I think.
Perfectly said. Anyone want to add anything?
I think there is a little risk today. I said we had a lot of experience with healthcare, and the benefit there is patient volumes are much higher. So you can see trends more quickly, because physicians' offices, or I'm going to talk about a vision practice, just see a lot more throughput. And so we had a client that was a vision practice that was doing nothing to request reviews, and they were organically getting about 100 reviews a month. But their average rating was around 3 stars, or maybe below 3 stars. When we started a program that asked every patient that came through the doors to leave a review, the volume jumped 15-fold, so 1,500 reviews a month. But more importantly, the average rating went up to about a 4.5. And then interestingly, they had a little internal miscommunication. They had to pause the program, went right back down to 100 and around a 3-star. And then when they sorted that out, turned it back on, right back up to around over 1,000, 4.5-star of what was coming in the door. And the lesson is, if you aren't asking people to leave reviews, the only people who take it upon themselves to do it are the people who had an extreme experience. So in healthcare, that is, this doctor saved my life, or this doctor was the biggest jerk I ever met. But most people have a good experience and are willing to write a review if you ask. So if you wait and see, you might not like the 1 or 2 people who take it upon themselves to write a review. It's a lot safer to be proactive.
Proactive, absolutely. Go ahead.
Yeah, and one other thing I wanted to add to that too is it's not always just about the review itself. I think when you go through this process, you are taking an opportunity also to ask for feedback. And asking for feedback, I think, is a really important way to continue to improve your experience for everybody across the board. And so that's a really important thing that we emphasize with IndieFin, is it's not just about reviews. This can be your annual feedback survey. So it's a way to collect that data internally that doesn't have to be published outside, to see where your clients stand with you, what are ways you can improve, and all that sort of stuff. So we see a lot of firms that don't take that process of collecting feedback annually as diligently.
Such a good pulse check. I agree. Brian, anything you want to say?
Well, I would just say that the risk is real, but so is the opportunity. And we've seen independent firms now winning business over wirehouse advisors because the independent firm has reviews and the wirehouse doesn't. And good example there where simply that individual says, I've heard of this firm, hadn't really heard of yours, but it's still a tough decision. You had a great value proposition that you delivered. Why should I choose you over this firm that I've heard of? And ultimately they said, well, do they have reviews that look like this? And so I'm picking a little bit there on the wirehouse firm, but that risk holds true for any firm, independent or otherwise, that doesn't have reviews relative to the firm that does.
Great points. Let's move into now a little bit more of the how-to. And yes, we're going to talk a little bit about compliance. So I'm going to start with you, Brian, actually. In one sentence or in a short summary, what does a compliant testimonial-based advertisement look like?
Yeah, and so to the SEC's credit, it took them forever to get there, but finally, as they did, they were familiar with social media and that there's not a lot of real estate if you want to promote a testimonial. And so they simply require 3 clear and prominent disclosures, whether or not the review was written by your client or somebody who's a non-client, if they were compensated or not to write the review, and then if there are any conflicts of interest. And if you're promoting just a single review, you also just need to say, and it could be 3 words, views not representative, and provide a link to a location where that consumer can read a representative list or all of your reviews.
Short
Long
and sweet.
sentence, but
Short
it's
and sweet. Love it. All right, perfect. Andrew, let's talk a little bit about the client journey. And if I'm a financial advisor and I'm thinking about, okay, well, where can I get the most exposure to my reviews? I've worked really hard to collect them. Where can I get the most exposure? Where in the client journey should advisors place their testimonials?
So I think 2 parts I think about, right? There's the discovery phase and the decision phase. And so, and I mentioned earlier, we'd increasing competition and trust deficit. So you want to tackle both those. Increasing competition, how do you do that? Testimonials are a great way to stand out. I think all of our platforms have solutions to help you, rise up the rankings. We specifically focus on Google reviews. It's where 92% of people start their online searches. So we want to meet clients where they are. So that is making sure people know who you are and know that you are an option. That's great, but second, they need to be able to actually build trust and know why you're, superior to someone else. So first, you want to stand out. You want to make sure you have a website that gets ranked high and all of that. After that, having them on your site, having them on lead gen pages, having on the decision elements of the page, why they should book a call with you, all the places where they're thinking about, do I want to take time to sit down with this person or not, because I'm looking at 3 other firms. And to the point Brian mentioned earlier, we hear all the time, it's not just about the increase in inbound leads that firms see when they work with us. It's consistently increasing close rate, because they're saying, I was evaluating you and company X, and I just couldn't find anything about company X, but I kept seeing all your happy clients. And so having that in those 2 places of get found and then secondly, build trust.
Wonderful. And I encourage all of the advisors in the room, like Google yourself, Google your firm. This should be an activity that you're doing regardless if you're using testimonials or not. See what's out there. We've met advisors who, shared a name with somebody who was totally not them, maybe the opposite of who they were, and that's what came up on Google. So it's a good practice. Whit, how can testimonials facilitate other types of marketing content? We're talking about user-generated content. What are the other options here?
Yeah, I think especially for a lot of firms, especially the ones that skew a little bit smaller, it is really hard to define their identity, define their brand, to know what is unique and resonant about themselves. Mm-hmm. And so in addition to the value that we've all described that you get once you collect and display those reviews, the content of the reviews is basically a free mini focus group. The clients will tell you the things that they appreciate about you, the advisor, and the firm, and that can be the basis of another marketing campaign. And then the other thing that's easy to do is, we're all biased. I think if you want to get into video marketing or video testimonials, the best way to do it is first give every client an opportunity to write a testimonial, so you're not cherry picking, and then you can go to the ones who are really singing your praises and say, would you like to get on camera, and reiterate that.
Cherry picking, that is a compliance term, right? You have to ask all of your clients for a review. So that's usually step number 1. Great advice there. Let's move along. I want to actually turn this question to you, Mayank. What does it look like to take testimonials and truly create a system, not just a one-off collect and promote?
Yeah, I think this is a really important point because of how much a lot of platforms prioritize recency and even how much consumers care about that. If they see that you have 100 reviews from 3 years ago, they may wonder why you haven't gotten any reviews in a long time. So I think it's important to figure out a way to request this sort of content from your clients repeatedly. That's actually one of the reasons why we often combine it with a feedback survey, because it's much more natural to ask for feedback at repeated cadences as opposed to asking for specifically a testimonial, which you can often do only once per client. But even still, I think making sure that you have a process for loading new customers, new clients into the process, getting testimonials from them, I think all these sorts of things are a really important part of keeping that fresh, so you're getting new testimonials that you can always be posting and power your marketing as well through that.
Absolutely. All right, let's move on to maybe some success stories. If there's anything that stands out to you, comes to mind, that might help our audience here from advisors you all have worked with, feel free to share. And then we're going to move into our Q&A.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say quickly, I was maybe a little bit flippant earlier when I said the urgency is not today. I meant your firm's not going to die today, but if you don't do testimonials. But I will say 70% of the firms we work with have reached the top 3 in local search on Google reviews. There's only 3 firms in local search on Google reviews in the top 3. And so if you're not one of them, all those people that are doing a search for a financial advisor near you are not finding you. But if they are, that's a whole lot more eyeballs you have and a whole lot more chances you have to build trust and get that first meeting.
I'll try and make it quick.
Okay.
Got a good client story. Somebody showed up, sent us an inbound lead because they had an SEC audit, and the auditor said when they looked at their testimonial page of 8 or so client quotes, did you give every client the opportunity to write a testimonial? They answered honestly no, and they were told they had to take that page down. So we did a demo, and within 1 week, they were live with over 50 5-star reviews on their website. And now if you go ask Google or ChatGPT, what do clients think about this advisor? You will get a full page, organized, summarized, how clients have sung the praises of this advisor. And so the point is, it is more compliant, it is remarkably easy to do, and it delivers a lot more value than just having a testimonial page with a few quotes.
Love that. Brian.
And I would just share a little bit of a mosaic as opposed to a single client success story. What we're hearing from firms, whether they're using smart assets here or other lead gen type tools, you think of these top of the funnel type services in that cost of client acquisition, and how now testimonials, if your funnel looked like this, you can now start to fatten your funnel. And so we're hearing from clients, advisory firms that are now fattening their funnel, having a much greater success rate because those testimonials are helping result in a higher conversion of prospects into clients.
I love that term, fatten the funnel. Mike.
Yeah, I think for us, it goes back to one of the things Andrew said about how it improves your close rate. That's really one of the biggest impacts that we've seen, and I think our biggest success story is Pure. We worked with them to collect over 1,500 reviews, and I think a lot of people are shocked when they hear that number, because a lot of other initiatives, when you don't use some of the softwares that are out here, you just try to do it, roll your own, you'll get single-digit % response rate, and so you won't really get the magnitude of reviews. So I think that's the importance of having a sophisticated process that really gets your collection rate up so that you can have the maximum impact across your whole marketing funnel.
Excellent. So next up, we're going to show a slide where you can scan a QR code and you can ask us any of the questions that we may not be able to get to in today's Q&A. We've got about 6 minutes left. You can also connect with us if you want to learn more and leave us any of your feedback. So we'll pull that slide up here in just a moment. I want to do a quick rapid fire, raise your hand if, with the audience. So raise your hand if you've ever chosen a product or a service based on the reviews alone. Yep, expected. Raise your hand if you've ever avoided buying a product or service because there weren't enough online reviews. Several people. Raise your hand if you're unsure whether testimonials are even allowed in your firm. Okay, good. This is good. I like seeing that. Raise your hand if you've ever paid more for a service because they had more reviews than their competitors. Yep. Okay, and then finally, raise your hand if your compliance department will let you use reviews. So there should be many of you in here based on the earlier question. Now, keep your hands up if you've begun using reviews. Okay. And now look around and see who is likely to win over a prospect to the ones who are not using reviews. These are the people. They're here. Okay, so now let's actually open up to questions from you all. So there should be a mic maybe being able to pass around, and if not, it looks like there's one just standing there. Or if you just want to shout loud, feel free to ask any question that you would like. We have a couple minutes here.
Nobody knows. If you do a broad search term in an LLM, I don't think anybody can tell you exactly what's going to happen. But at some point, you're going to be down to considering, I saw data that said if you ask for recommendations or referrals, you're going to wind up with 2.6 names. If we call it 3, Just about every prospect at some point is going to be evaluating around 3 advisors, and whether they search in Google or they ask ChatGPT about it, that's where almost no matter where your reviews show up online, the fact that you have them is going to pay significant dividends to what that AI is going to present in terms of its opinion of you as an advisor.
AI likes reviews, it likes awards, it likes all those things. Brian, did you want to add anything? We had another question.
Yeah, real quick, I think if you think about your experience on Amazon, historically they've had lots of reviews. We've all known how to read them, but more recently Amazon has introduced kind of that AI summary of reviews about a particular product. And if you think about LLMs going forward, and you have a consumer asking about what do people say about working with Diana Cabris's financial advisor other than these amazing boots that she has on. And the more consistency there is in those reviews talking about certain things, it's going to be more likely that the LLM summary is putting together, hey, this individual clearly does great work with business owners because there's business owners talking about on a repeated basis the types of services that you've been providing them. You could apply that to technology, or maybe if you're focused on serving nurses, whatever your niche may be. And so those testimonials can really be powerful if you have a particular ideal client profile or niche that you're trying to target as well.
Absolutely. Question?
Advisors are far more concerned, in my experience, about if their clients are going to be comfortable leaving a review than the clients are. The clients are used to it. Everyone gets asked for reviews all the time.
Yeah.
Clients do it right away.
Some clients want to write another review. I had an advisor come to our booth today and tell me that he had a client who wanted to write a second review. So yes, they want to write. They like to write about their experiences. Question here, and before you ask, I'm just going to cue the AV team to please put our slide up, our call to action slide. There we go. So there's the QR code. If you want to tell us what you think about the session, about the topic, if you have any questions that we won't be able to answer today, we've got some free resources. You can do that there. Okay, go ahead with your question. Sorry about that.
Sure. So we're white labeled. We focus on giving you content that you can use on your own site or on Google. And then we have automation workflows with common CRM so that you can have a approved process that goes on autopilot after you have client meetings to collect feedback.
Ours is really that, the platform is based on what we did in healthcare. It's sort of been pressure tested by organizations with multiple thousands of physician profiles. So if you have a more complex organization or more complex setup, I feel like we've already got processes and systems in place to handle it.
Brian with Wealth Tender.
Sure. So with Wealth Tender, we add on to the collection and promotion tools on your website, our consumer-facing website, wealthtender.com, visited by several consumers, and then the opportunity for your reviews to not only appear for your firm, but also with each individual advisor, so really strengthening the SEO for your advisors and firms, and then a lot more digital marketing resources beyond just testimonials, but we'll save that for the demo call that you're going to set up with me later this afternoon.
She will. All right, and then Mayank with Wiser Advisor.
Yeah, so our reviews platform is called IndieFin, and I think of it as sort of a 3-in-1 where you can work with us for lead gen on Wiser Advisor. That's integrated with our reviews platform, that's IndieFin. And then the other half of IndieFin is the internal feedback survey. So people like to run that annually, and so I think we consider that a really important part of our process. It's not just testimonials, but feedback as well.
Well, you can scan the QR code, leave us any of your thoughts again, or if you have any other questions that come up, feel free to scan that now and you can plug them in later as they come up. Gentlemen, thank you so much for bringing such important insights to the conference today, to this session. This is an important topic. We're all going to keep talking about it. So if you're not following us on LinkedIn, feel free to connect with us. You will see a lot of content, a lot of helpful resources on the topic. Thank you, and thank you to our audience.